Today, I'll be talking about lower wage living versus the rising cost of living in Washington, D.C. As someone born and raised in Washington, D.C., I've personally witnessed the city transform from an affordable place to live into one where many residents struggle just to get by. The increasing gap between wages and the cost of living has made financial stability impossible for lower wage living. According to data from Missouri Economic and Research Center, Washington, D.C. is low on the affordability scale. As of 2024, it ranks 49th on the list with a cost of living index score of 141.9. Only Hawaii, Massachusetts, and California are more expensive than D.C. Washington, D.C. has high healthcare and transportation costs, with annual healthcare expenses averaging around $13,239 and transportation costs ranging from $6,000 to $11,000 per year. According to the graph on the right, Washington, D.C. has a 2020 income ratio of 29.2%, reflecting significant income inequality compared to other major U.S. cities. While D.C.'s middle class is stronger than Philadelphia's, it still faces a wide gap between its richest and poorest households compared on the graph. This graph compares the 2020 income ratios across five major U.S. cities: Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, Atlanta, and Boston. The 2020 ratio measures the income share of the bottom 20% relative to the top 20%. A lower percentage indicates greater income inequality. Washington, D.C. has a 2020 income ratio of 29.2%, reflecting significant income inequality compared to other major U.S. cities. While D.C.'s middle class is stronger than Philadelphia's, it still faces a wide gap between its richest and poorest households within the city. The high cost of living within DC due to rent spikes and inflation has started a surge of people leaving the city and going back to their hometowns. Saying highlights the shift in employment patterns, noting that the district shares of workers in business and financial occupations decreased from 30% in 2019 to 21% post-pandemic. High healthcare and transportation costs, with annual healthcare expenses averaging 13,000 and transportation costs ranging from 6,000 to 11,000 per year. In 2023, approximately 14.5% of DC residents lived below the poverty line, a rate slightly lower than the national average. The median value of owner-occupied housing units in DC is $724,600, with median monthly owners cost of $3,000 with $3,062, placing substantial financial strain on residents. In Washington, D.C., the high cost of living disproportionately impacts lower income residents. As noted in Jesse's Hanbury study, wealthier cities like D.C. may offer great value to high income households, even with higher normal prices, because amenities, goods, and services are often geared towards their preferences and purchasing power. For lower income groups, however, DC's high living costs do not translate into great value or better living conditions, deepening economic inequality. A wealthy family might easily be able to afford a $2,000 a month for groceries, private school, and housing near downtown, while a low-income family struggles just to pay $1,000 for basic groceries and an apartment far from work and schools, even though they live in the same city with the same overall prices. Sometimes a wealthy family gets more options, more convenience, and better quality than lower income families get, higher stress, fewer choices, and less value while still being within the same city. There is a growing concern that elderly individuals are increasingly experiencing homelessness. They can't keep up with the shifts in today's economy, and some, if not most elders, don't have a pension to rely on, and their only form of support is Social Security. In Washington, D.C., elderly residents living on fixed incomes struggle with high living costs. Although wealthy cities like DC offer a wide range of goods and services, the benefits primarily favor younger and higher income groups. As Jesse Hanbury's study explains, in wealthier cities, various income groups perceive the cost of living differently, meaning that while high income residents experience greater value, low income groups, including seniors, face limited affordable options despite higher overall prices. This leaves many elderly DC residents more vulnerable to housing instability, healthcare inaccessibility, and economic hardships. Housing affordability remains a major challenge in Washington, D.C., where high costs continue to outpace the incomes of many residents. Programs like the Housing Production Trust Fund aim to expand affordable housing, but building new units is expensive and slow. Shifting resources towards operating subsidies or rent supplements will allow the city to create affordable units in highly resourced areas of DC for a fraction of the cost of new production. In addition to local reforms, a federal renter tax credit would be a powerful tool to directly lower housing costs for renters struggling with affordability. Instead of waiting for limited vouchers, renters could receive tax-based support to cover rent burdens, helping them remain stable in a city like DC, where rising costs often pushes families out. Together, these local and federal approaches would expand affordable housing access across income groups and neighborhoods, making support more equitable and widespread throughout. The spike in DC's cost of living comes from different factors. DC having an above average minimum wage has shown to attract people from all over the country. However, since the post pandemic period, DC businesses have steadily declined due to people leaving and pursuing stay at home jobs and careers. Saying highlights a shift in employment patterns, noting that the district share of workers in business and financial occupations decreased from 30% in 2019 to 21% post pandemic. She also utilizes BLS report to highlight employment trends in Washington, D.C., noting that in the past year, employment in the district grew by only 1%, a figure not considered statistically significant. Additionally, she references IRS data to discuss demographic shifts, indicating that between 2020 and 2023, the city experienced a net loss of 26,210 residents due to domestic outmigration. These economic and demographic changes have placed even more pressure on DC's housing market, contributing to the ongoing affordable crisis that many residents now face. Housing affordability in Washington, D.C. continues to strain renters with median monthly rents around 1900, consuming approximately 29.5% of the median household income and pushing many residents beyond the recommended 30% threshold. As rent burdens rises, the risk of housing instability grows, especially for low and middle income households. A federal renter tax credit offers a meaningful solution as it could prevent homelessness by stabilizing housing for low-income renters, especially renters of color most impacted by housing insecurities. By pairing local efforts with federal support, Washington, D.C. could create a more sustainable housing system that keeps long-term residents secure and maintains the city's diversity and economic vitality. Throughout this research, I have gained a deeper understanding of the complex factors driving housing affordability issues within Washington, D.C. and across the country. I learned how rising rents stagnates wages, demographic shifts, and post-pandemic employment changes have all contributed to an environment where many renters are struggling to just stay housed and also pay their day-to-day bills. One important point to recognize is that housing affordability challenges are not only driven by high rents, but also by the shrinking supply of affordable units and the loss of low-cost housing over time. Many affordable units across the country, including in Washington, D.C., have been lost due to expiring affordability requirements and a lack of new affordable constructions. Additionally, lower income renters, seniors, and people with disabilities are often the most affected facing housing instability. Even if they are working or receiving fixed incomes such as Social Security, without a strong intervention such as federal renters tax credits, stronger preservations of existing affordable housing and expanded local rent supports, the national housing crisis is likely to worsen, leading to higher rates of homelessness, displacements, and economic inequality across the United States.